Hello and welcome back to another video where I talk a lot about what I'm doing on how I make comics and fumble easy lines that are supposed to be intros. I am once again your host, Ruben Armstrong, the only person that records anything on this channel, so there's no need to introduce myself, but let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing today. It's a very special video because I get to break down one of the processes that I know very little about. I know I said that last time, but this is one that I'm actually a little bit concerned about filming, but if I can tell you a secret about filming, you never know what's going to happen. In fact, that's why I don't stream, because the first time I ever tried to record something, someone walked through that door and collapsed face first on the floor in front of me. It was quite tragic, really, but the footage was still good, so I just made sure to edit it out. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Such a dumb way to start a video. But you know what? I think I'll keep it. Mostly because I can't edit it out. Alright, so like I said, we're doing editing this time. Or I'm sorry, we're not editing. We're doing lettering. And you can see kind of what I've got here on this. Let me collect my thoughts a bit. So here is chapter 3 of Death's Favorite Daughter. You've seen us, if you've been watching this series very long. We made the script for this. It was a fun process, a rather long video if you watch the entire long form. A rather fun video in the short form. I don't know how I feel about the long form because it just took way too long to record, but it's nice to finally see that we're getting, to the end of this particular chapter. So basically we're in the stage where the first fight with Malzareth is kind of wrapping up here. I've got some of the effects that I still need to work on right here. We'll get to that. And we're coming down to the point where Feldrin and Eric, our two main characters, have to team up. And it's kind of a neat bit here because what I get to do is kind of take their characters, and you can see there's a lot of back and forth going on here, and I get to kind of expose what they think about each other in this conversation and kind of flesh out their characters a little bit. Specifically, we get to see Eric's here. You know, he's going to be talking about the demon, or the devil, I'm sorry. There's a difference between demons and devils. The devil, Malzareth, is going to be kind of explained, and how devils claim territories, and how basically once they're in their territories on Earth, or on the material plane, they can kind of do whatever they want. Not unlimited cosmic power, but, you know, pretty close. So we've got here, you can probably notice these lines. This is where the page breaks are. So if I unlock this layer, here's page I don't know, right on top of page 1 less than I don't know. And when I set up my Illustrator document, what I want to make sure is that these pages aren't going anywhere. So I always have it locked like this. But even more importantly, they're just butted up against each other, because I will have like text bubbles like this that'll overlap. And, you know, when I go to export this, I want to make sure that this lines up, because the reader is going to be like scrolling through like so, and I want everything to align and make sense, because these page breaks here are not like representative of where the actual page break is. It's just where I want the scene to shift. This is like as if like we were taking a cut in a film. So, you know, we're here, cut, we're here, cut, and then we move on. Anyway, enough about panels. Let's get on to this. So I've got here the pasted script that we wrote last time. So this is panel 25. Feldrin raises his hand to retort, but suddenly feels woozy for a magic expenditure. Plus, what is Eric talking about? Question mark. What trap? Carther's coil. Did you ever see what kind of devil he was? And this is kind of where we get into Eric's monologue. Something that's fun about writing for this is like Efeldrin is like all about action. So every time I write for her, it's like she does this, she points, she, you know, looks off, she, you know, points again. She's a lot of pointing. She's quite rude. She'd never get a job at Disney, that's for sure. But with Eric, there's a lot of him talking. So when I'm writing for Efeldrin gets all these action parts, and I draw out her actions, and I don't really necessarily need to think about what she's saying. Whereas Eric, everything's about talking. So when I work on his scenes, I make sure that I'm thinking of what he's saying first and foremost, because his actions are, you know, it's not that he doesn't do action. He's got quite a few interesting, you know, moments in the fight scene before this, but I also don't want, I know his main thing is his intelligence, and I want to show that. So let's see, that devil was a Mirelith, the higher level baron from the hells. So this is a caption. I know because it says caption. This is why I highly recommend to everybody, get comicwriter.io. Just go up here, comicwriter.io, and it should show up. And here's like a script that I've been working on the other browser, and it's got everything that I want, everything that I need. It tells me how many, like right here, how many words I've got in this bubble, or, you know, this caption. And it's just like, it's the best. But seriously, it formats it for you, and this format is why, you know, if you use this, your letterer, if that's a different person than you, is just gonna be so excited to work with you, rather than if they have to guess where and what and who's saying. So here we're basically going to kind of break the rules a little bit, which is not a great way to start. Well, I don't know, we'll see. But basically the rules are, and you can see this within every, well, I deleted it, but if I were to go here, in every pack of 10, because you know, the work area is only this far down and up, so I can only work on so many pages at a time. And yes, I know I could go this way. I'd rather not. I'd rather just have 10 or so pages. And what I do in every template is I have, again, all on separate layers. I have my sound fix, I have my letters, and a comic bubble to kind of show me what I've done before, captions, and these are different for every character. And then I've got the to be continued, you know, for that one time I forgot the to be continued, and since then I've pasted this in everything because I just keep kicking myself over it. I deleted it in this one, but if you could see, oh no, it's not in here. I deleted it and didn't even have it. All right then, well then, we're just gonna have to open this up. Gonna have to blur out some of this later because some of these projects are secret. So let's go ahead and let's get DFD lettering part 1. Here we go. You can see kind of what I've got here, where these are Eric's thought bubbles, as opposed to Efeldrin's thought bubbles, which are these. I don't think she thinks too much in this. Well, she doesn't think too much in general. But, yes, here we go. So here, you can see. These are her thought bubbles. I call them captions because they're not really thought bubbles in the traditional sense. Like, you know, where you've got, you know, if I could cue in the Arthur imagination sound effect. But, like, it's not like that. I don't personally love having, you know, the kind of bubble thoughts. They're not my favorite. I much rather kind of like these, because this is what I grew up on when I was reading Spider-Man. I don't know, like, I guess it was the Amazing Spider-Man run, but it was from the library because I didn't collect comics till much later. But this was the kind of thing that they would use to emphasize or show the thoughts that the characters had, rather than just having these kind of cartoony bubbles. And I think that gives it a certain level of seriousness, but then also it does really help with like the formatting, because it goes from, you know, we've got panel, and then kind of like a panel, but there's obviously nobody speaking here, so we can kind of, you know, use this visual clue to tell us, oh, this is Eric's thoughts. Let's say, no, I like that line, that's fine. One thing that you want to consider when working with any comic bubble, whether it's a caption, narration, or whatever, you don't want, and again, I'm an amateur, so take this with a grain of salt, but you don't want it to be like way too long. Like, this is kind of pushing it for me, so I just realized something. He's a Myrolith, which I think I called him that before I played Fallout. And if you have followed my channel for a while, you know how I feel about Myrolurks from Fallout, and how I have a special relationship with them. For those of you who don't know, let's just say it's a special bond there. So I must have done that unconsciously. It's not exactly the same, but yeah. So you can see already, like, I've bolded this term, or bold italics. And I do that whenever I can to try to emphasize what's important, or words that the characters are saying. So like here, you know, is it to lure in demons who can't tell you're from the underworld? Or is it some way to escape the trap we're in right now, or we're in now? And, you know, it gives like a way to put emphasis on certain words, and also gives a certain level of like flow. So here you can see mortal, your, blew up my bed, me, thank you, woke you, and it's like, I already have this back and forth pattern going, but the bold words helps with that a little bit. And that's a trick that I learned from reading comics like Brian Michael Bendis, and I forget the other, I forget the writer or artist. I'm not sure who did it. I'm fairly certain it was the artist. Their Powers series. I'll talk about Powers in a second, but one of the things that they have in that book is like a million, and I mean a lot, of comic bubbles going everywhere, and they do a fairly decent way, like, job at conveying the information and helping the reader not get lost through all of it. But I will say it's a lot of text, so if you can learn a lot by reading that. But I will say this: I don't really recommend Powers. Especially if you're collecting physical comic books like what I like to do. And one of the reasons that I don't like Powers is Brian Michael Bendis, while he is while he's very good at writing, he also is kind of like one of those guys that it's like he's got like, you know, a couple of good lines, and then he'll do something, you know, that's rather not great. So like for reference, for people who don't know Brian Michael Bendis, I believe he was the artist, or the writer who, you know, came up with Miles Morales, and he wrote a lot of his storylines. I don't know if he was the original creator of Miles Morales, but he was the guy who wrote some of the best stories for him. However, he's also the one that brought Superboy back in DC Comics and aged him up, and basically got rid of a wonderful run where him and Damian Wayne were the Super Sons, and it was just this, you know, that's Brian Michael Bendis. You can either have a great Brian Michael Bendis comics or a crappy Brian Michael Bendis comic. And the thing with Powers is, it's good in the sense of like, if you're into noir comics and you're into the darker themes and stuff like that, yes. However, there's no real I don't know. As far as like the lessons you can learn from reading comics, I think it's great. As far as like recommendations go, it's a little dark for my tastes, in the sense of, yes, I have it. I have a large portion of the series. But I don't like recommending it to people who are just looking for like, you know, something to read. The other thing about Brian Michael Bendis is, so when he was writing Powers, he started in Image Comics, but then he moved to, I think it was an imprint of Marvel, and then he moved to an imprint of DC, and then he moved to like another, like, so the series is incredibly hard to collect because it had to be reprinted like a million times. But then it also was like, so like for me, it's like, you know, you go to the comic book store, you're looking for like the spine of the Powers comic, and you know, some of it's yellow, some of it's red, some of it's, you know, doesn't look anything like it. All the covers are different, and you don't know where to start, especially since like there was a I don't know if a reboot or something right in the middle. Like, it gets incredibly convoluted, especially for a story that like should be. The one thing that I will say about Powers that I feel like comic book writers should learn is like, it's very much one of those realistic stories where you know, it's not just the main character goes up against Dr. you know, Death, and then Dr. Death is defeated, and now we move on to the next one, and the next one, and Dr. Death escapes again, and we move on. And it's, you know, no, it's a very realistic style of storytelling where you have these characters who change, and, you know, yes, they're consistent in the sense of like who they are, but they also change as people. And I think overall that's why Powers is such a good and gritty story, because sorry, I was reading. I think it's such a good story because, like, you know, we're looking at humans and the way that humans act, and the way that humans act isn't great all the time. So if you're looking for escapism, Powers is not the way to go, because Powers is, like I said, it's very realistic in the level of human depravity and whatnot. And I don't know, I like to personally have like a certain level of, I don't, how do I describe it? I don't dislike dark comics. I think there's definitely some lessons to be learned, and some especially when it comes to writing, some good things to pick up. But I do think that for all that darkness, there is a level of hope that, you know, we as people can still pick up on. But anyway, I'm rambling on and on. I think this is mostly coming out because I just finished watching a documentary series about some rather tragic events, and now I'm like, oh man. I'm like, it's okay, guys. All right, let's break this down. All right, devils can't use their full hellish powers here. Yeah, let's break this right here because this is far too many. Because I still want people to see the artwork, and I still want people to not, because that's the biggest thing about your biggest enemy when it comes to lettering is the fact that, especially nowadays, people have very short attention spans when it comes to just text and reading. So what you have to do is be sure that your information is very concise within these boxes or these bubbles or whatever, because if they're not, it's just, people are not going to read that much text. They just aren't. Like, here. So I'm just grabbing, I'm just grabbing Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Avon Oeming Powers 1. And something that I like about this is they use a lot of like like repeated panels, like so. So you can see like we've got the same image maybe 10 times. But what we also have, where's that page? I should have marked it. But there is like so much talking. And for me, like I think they did a good job, you know, with the flow of this. Golly, I wish I could find the page. There's one page where there's, yeah, this. Look at all that. Look at all of that. And I think they did a good job as far as the formatting goes. I should talk into the mic behind here. I think they did a good job. But the problem that I have is your average comic reader is going to go and like pick this up and be like, oh yeah, I will read this novel's worth of text just in a, you know, in a graphic novel, you know, about an investigation. And I think, yes, in this case, I keep talking about this. I need to pick a different example, or a different comic book to pick on. But I think for me, the lesson that Powers teaches is you can tell a great story without grabbing everybody. So it doesn't have to be a popular comic to be a successful comic. That being said, with this, you know, I want to explain a lot of things without it feeling like you're having to read a tutorial, like in a video game. Like we've stopped the action just so you have to learn about, you know, the mechanics of the world, the mechanics of the game. So what I'm going to do here is try to break down the information a little more digestibly for people, for my readers, I should say. Let's just cut this and just say in this realm. You just changed how the script works. Yep. And I can do that because I'm the writer and the letterer. Don't do that if you're just the letterer, unless like you and the scriptwriter have like a understanding. Because like you don't want to be that guy. Let me see if I can maybe change the shape of this a little bit. Yeah, hold on. Something that, oh my goodness, no. There we go. Sorry. Something I've realized recently is that when I'm very focused, I drop off completely when I'm talking. I can't hold a conversation with myself and work and, you know, entertain, but I try. Isn't that worth something? Not really. I guess we're just gonna have like kind of a blocky one here. I like only having 2 lines in the captions, but sometimes you can't help it. If you haven't watched the short form version of this, which I think comes out first, please do so. I'm a lot better prepared, and I have a script, and generally I stick to that script until I don't. And I don't know. I doubt that anybody would come to see however long of a video this is before, you know, watching that. But who knows? I get interesting comments on these videos. Well, on all of the videos, but like, especially like, did I misspell this? I did misspelled it. Always check for misspellings. That's something else. Something that I've noticed is the crowd that seems to like these videos that are longer and me just talking and working is different from the crowd that watches the short form videos, which is different from the crowd that watches the video game based, you know, videos. And it's just like, it's nice to see like the different types of people that come in and the different types of people that are interested in things that, you know, maybe are featured in the video and then stay for the art. And that's what I want to try to do, and something that I'm going to try to do a little bit more is try to feature more stuff that maybe people are interested in, but then also feature the artistic side of it. I think the Fallout series is a good example of that, because for me, I get to spend so much time working on the editing and the, you know, thinking of jokes and playing the game itself and having fun with it, and even making fan art of it, you know, is a great outlet for me. But at the same time, the Fallout community is such a vast one that enjoys, you know, anything put out about Fallout, because they haven't seen, you know, Fallout 5 probably won't see the light of day for another, you know, decade, which is unfortunate. So I don't know. I think it's neat to interact with multiple communities and kind of bring them, you know, both in, because the art community, you know, maybe doesn't know as much about Fallout, and the Fallout community doesn't know about as much about art. So, you know, that's fun. All right. Actually, this can go down right here where I've got this guy, because I think that's more accurate. You'll notice that, like, I kind of have a zigzag pattern. This is because people read in the Z pattern. So they're going to read from, you know, that back, forth to Hells. Then from down here, other than. And so what you want to do is kind of promote this motion down to here. And so what I've done is I've offset this just a little bit, so it goes boom, boom, boom. And I could keep it all centered, but I think it doesn't have as much impact. And plus it just looks far too clinical. That's why sometimes, like, I don't like these things to be, you know, perfectly centered, or I don't use rulers as much, because that way it gives it a kind of natural movement to the comic. Because already the person who's reading this is going to be reading it on their phone, and they're already going to be, you know, so they're staring at a rectangle with a bunch of other rectangles on it with text in a rectangle. So I don't want the rectangles to be, you know, aligned in a rectangle. I want them to be a little bit more natural and interesting and appealing to their eyes as they you know, work their way through my comic. So they're full hellish powers here. Yeah, let's go ahead and emphasize hellish. Actually, let's emphasize full. You can do multiple words, but I think it's better if you just do one or two. So here we're going to be full powers here in this realm. Unless they make a pact that gives them dominion of the territory in this realm. And judging by how he can sprout wings and summon armies of devils. Yeah, so let's go over here. Yeah. Keep anyone. Last time I recorded, I did not speak for like a good hour on that recording, and it was rather frustrating for me to rewatch. So this one I'm trying to do a little bit better about that, but failing right now. I keep going back to this. I can't help but wonder if like maybe only two should be up here, because like we've got the houses, which is cool, but I don't know that I like this like spread out so much. a little bit better, I guess. I don't know. I guess I like that. Alright, go ahead. Bold italic. The reason I use 24 points, I generally use either 22 or 24. 22 is like the smallest that I'll go. I'm sure I've gone smaller, but I don't love anything smaller than that, just because, or I don't prefer, I guess I should say, anything smaller than that, just because it's like, it starts to get a little bit harder to read, and I want it to be like the easiest thing in the world for somebody to pick up, you know, DFD and just read. Just the smooth, easy story from top to bottom as we go. And you'll see that like in this, I'm sure the time lapse of this video will be absolutely terrible to watch because I'll be doing this the whole time. So, you know, there's not much I can do about that because I have to, for me personally, I have to see how the reader is seeing this. And you know, if there was an option to have like maybe like a separate viewer where I could just read the comic how the readers read it, say that 10 times fast, then I would, just because they've got that like on the publishing options, but I wish there was some sort of like plugin maybe for Clip Studio Paint where they did that, because frankly, I need to see how my readers are going to, I need to preview how my readers are going to read the comic. Because otherwise, there's just this huge breakdown in communication, and for me, it's so essential to be able to, and I've harped on this a lot, but think of what the medium is that you're using. If you're using a book, set out your pages when you draw them, before you draw them, when you're planning them out, you know, side by side, so that you know, okay, the reader will see this, then they will see this, and then they will flip the page and, oh, there's something surprising on this page that they didn't expect. You know, think through that, because that's their experience. That's what drawing comics is. It's not just, oh, stuff in boxes. No, it is the whole book, the whole format of comics is your art medium. So use that, and use that to your advantage. And that's why, for me, every time I set up a file, I can't have these files sitting next to each other. I don't want to have, you know, this part of the story right next to this part of the story, because that's not how people see it. I have to be able to, as much as I can, simulate for myself, okay, we're scrolling down. This is how we're seeing the comic. And that's something that I will go over and continue talking about again and again and again, because it's very important to me that the readers experience it how I want them to experience the story. And we have a clear line of communication between me, the artist and the writer, and them, the viewer, and hopefully the enjoyer of the story. I think I'm going to break this up into two, and this is a good time to talk about comic book bubbles. So comic book bubbles are kind of funny. I've met people that really dislike comic book bubbles and how they look, because they just look so cartoony, they don't want to read the story. And I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, there's like a huge science behind them and how they work. Because you can't just throw, you know, whatever you want into a comic book bubble. You have to actually kind of know your story. You have to know how they function. So like in this case, I've got a lot of text that will be here. Hold on, let me try to get this set up for right. And what I want is, you know, to be able to convey this whole sentence to my reader, but I also know that in order for that to happen, I might have to shift some of my my text over into this other bubble. So instead of having, you know, okay, this bubble here, Or, you know, this bubble here, this bubble here. These two thoughts are connected, I know that, so I might just shift this top one up once I get it formatted to the way that I like it. Correct this. Well, there's an easier way to format this, I just know it. And Batting Studios, if you're watching this, first of all, you are an inspiration. You're really cool. Secondly, please don't judge me too hard. I try to pick up as much as I can from your little short videos, but golly, I would love it. I would absolutely love it if there was a book put out just about comic book lettering that explained or was like a catalog of interesting ways to letter your comics and presented in a way that wasn't just so, you know, dull. But I find that the best letterers, you know, sometimes like a little more heavy-handed information than what's entertaining or what's, you know, interesting to read. Not to say that letterers are boring people. They certainly aren't. You know, there certainly are not. But I think that at the same time, you know, there's a way to show a bunch of bubbles with text in it in an interesting fashion. So here, this tool, not this one. Hold on, let me put that to the back. This tool right here, under Pathfinder, combines your paths, aka it makes your shapes one shape, which is so totally awesome. I love it. It's my favorite tool. I remember the day that I found that tool, and I've yet to, like, I just love it so much. I'm gonna change this to town, just to keep that a little more clear. And I don't love how this is flowing as much as I thought I would, which means you can easily cast There's Coil, anyone he wants in this town to trap. Anyone he wants in this town. Yeah, that works. Although keep, I think, is a better word. Just because of like how the spell is. So I'll leave it alone. Let me go ahead and copy that. Delete it. Yeah, we'll just leave it in the box for now. I don't need it in the specifically to that shape. Figuring out a lot of these tricks does kind of just come down to experience. And I think it also comes down to reading a lot, like just a butt ton of comics. Because for me, you know, if you're taking your time and observing comics as you read them and see, okay, why did they, you know, make this bold? Why is this 2 bubbles instead of just 1? Why is, you know, this way or that way? And sometimes you can, you know, come up with what the artist or the writer is thinking. Sometimes you can also, you know, come up with assumptions that aren't accurate. But I think it's worth spending that time and considering, all right, why is this the way that it is? And then hopefully, you know, if you can find somebody who works in comics or somebody, you know, on the internet now in this wonderful information age, you can most likely find the answers to most of your questions. And if you can't, you know, then you can find cool YouTubers that have channels that talk about how to make comic stuff and sometimes know a little bit about things that most people don't know about comics because he spent a long time making his channel to try to be as good as it can and informative to people who want to make comics. Like and subscribe. I don't care what you think. I'm funny. I think I'm funny. Snap. So make a pack. Dominion. I might change this to a comic bubble just to show that it's not just in his thoughts, since he's intersecting here. Yeah, that's a good idea. Which means I gotta shift this to black, and then just go 1, 2, 3, I did that wrong. Whatever. It's okay. This isn't Sesame Street. Hopefully it's not Sesame Street. That's a body that's covered in blood. I don't know if they ever address the fact that the Count is a vampire. Like, he is, like, canonically a vampire and drinks blood. Or should drink blood. I don't know. Hold on. Does the Count from Sesame Street drink blood? First result. No, the Count from Sesame Street does not drink blood. He's a vampire-like character and is obsessed with counting, not drinking blood. He is known best for his eccentric counting habits and is a beloved character on the show. He is often shown reacting to other characters with amusement or exasperation, but never with fear, according to The Guardian. But that's the AI overview. Never demonstrates a fondness for blood. So, why not? Oh my goodness. Holy Toledo. No, look at this. Look at this. No, don't open the... Hold on. Open... Yeah. Look at this. This is what the Count used to look like. Is that what he used to look like? It's on his wiki. Oh golly, I think I've actually seen this in a book. Yeah. Oh my, no. Count in Franken. Okay, so this is something else. Either way, that's terrifying. In popular culture. Mary Shelley's Frank. Oh, okay, it's a different thing. All right. I thought it was how he actually looked, and I was going to be a little terrified because all I ever remembered was him being who he was and not that. So that's not what the Count used to look like. Oh man, that was going to be a cool revelation. Thank goodness. But yeah, like, why is he obsessed with counting and not drinking blood? Because, like, for me, like, the dark version of that would be, like, the Count is, like, you know, obsessed with counting because he's counting victims. Counting liters of blood. 1 dead Muppet. 2 dead Muppets. So much blood from the dead Muppets. Which I guess there's not a lot of blood in Muppets considering they're only puppeted by like 2 hands. Although, well, alright, anyway, I'm done thinking about that. We are not going down that rabbit hole any further. I forgot to add 2 little lines that show that this continues from the last panel. Alright, so now we go down to this exasperated panel. Or Etheldrin exasperated in this panel, whatever. Okay. I'm sure there's a better way to copy and paste the text into here, but this is what I found to be the best. Here we are. In short, where mice in his trap until the message was big. I might shorten this. This seems a little long. So this goes here. Torturous ways. I don't know if that's the right word. Torturous seems a little too hoity for my toity. Why is that so tiny? Boop. There we go. Slow. I'll just write slow. That's fine. So there I've got those two pieces of text. And then I've got a Feldrin's overreaction, which will probably fit about right here. Yeah, so like something like that. It's not too bad. You want to kind of keep it in like these nice little short, like 2-3 lines of text, rather than just like having a really, really long, you know, big panel or a really big comic bubble, because that's just going to be annoying to read. I say that and then I make one that's 4. This isn't, I don't know, it's not too bad. I might break it up into 2, we'll see. You'll notice that this is cut off right here. That's because the page goes over to this side. So I'm going to copy this page over here and then try to align it as best I can. Oh. It's perfect. It's mini. It's mini Feldrin. You gotta laugh at some things. Alright, there we go. That's not gonna stay, but essentially I'm gonna have them come down this way. So what you want to keep in mind is like this is one whole phone screen. So the reader is essentially going to be seeing all of this image at once. So you want to keep that in mind as you're like positioning your panels and figuring out just how crowded or uncrowded you want this scene to be. Because if it looks like they're saying a lot, that might, again, you're dealing with a short attention span. So don't, don't try to force your readers to read more than they're interested in reading. Unless, like, you know your readers and you know the genre that you're working with is just going to be, it's going to be, a lot of text regardless. Like, especially if you're working in, like, the mystery genre or the science fiction, I think, as well. If you're leaning more into the science side rather than the fiction, you want to, you need to know your audience, and if your audience is fine with reading a ton of text, then that's fine. Don't, give them short, tiny bubbles just because you think they might get bored if you know that that's not, your audience. But at the same time, you also don't want to assume that every word that you write is going to be read. You hope it is, but sometimes that's just not the case. I remember reading a comic somebody sent me, and I like this person as far as like their recommendations. I like how, you know, most of the things that they send me are actually pretty good. But I remember getting this and I was skimming through it, because after like 5 or 6 lines or five or six pages of just, you know, these huge comic bubbles with all this exposition about the fantasy world that, you know, is going on, I just didn't care. So I skimmed through it and I looked at the art and I was like, all right, not for me. And that's you know, most comic readers or webcomic readers aren't as generous as that. You know, that's for me to have, you know, gotten that far without putting the comic down. That's generous. And that's not me being snobby, because I'm not that snobby with my comics. I feel like I'm picky, for sure, but I don't feel like I'm snobbish if I see something, you know, not done super well in a comic. But I will say the average comic reader does, you know, this is a medium with a lot of competition. If they don't like what you have, you can find comics anywhere. A lot of them are for free, so that's something else to keep in mind. It's not you versus your readers. It's never you versus your readers. If at any point you think, oh, you know, my readers have to, you know, do this, if they don't like that, they're just gonna have to get over it, or I'm gonna make this decision even if my readers hate it. I hope they hate it. No, then you're in the wrong business. I remember listening to an interview recently by a lot of comic creators, and I think it was so depressing to hear these people that are, you know, supposedly at the top, supposedly you know, top of the game, the people that we're supposed to, you know, be looking up to, and they're just like, yeah, everybody hates my comic, good, you know, I hope all the stands of you know, whichever comic they were writing and whatever they're talking about, you know, politically motivated or whatever, I hope that's, you know, causes a stir and whatever, because it's what I want and it's what I care about. I'm like, that's just not how you should go about this. It's like, you should cater to your readers. You should cater to the people that enjoy that. And if there isn't, you know, people that enjoy that, you know, maybe at that point you need to start considering, all right, maybe I shouldn't make enemies of this, you know, series that's been running for a super long time. And there's a lot of politics in comics, and I'm not going to get into that because I won't stop talking about it. But I will say, anytime you're sitting down to work and it's you versus whoever reads this, it's not a good place to be. I don't expect everybody to like my comic, and I'm okay with that. There's a lot of people that I know that, you know, hasn't read my comic specifically just because they don't want to. They don't enjoy, you know, this type of story, and I'm totally fine with that. I didn't write that for them. I wrote it for the people that, you know, would like it. And if that turns out to be, you know, not so many people, that's okay. And I can deal with that personally. I don't have to be, you know, validated by people reading my story. I think there's a certain level where I do want people to read my story. And there's a certain level that I will conform and be ready to change elements of what I'm doing for that audience. But at the same time, there's a certain level that I won't. And so that's the kind of mindset that you have to have is, you know, how much give will you have on your story? Because I remember reading about Robert Kirkman, and he was figuring out, you know, he was writing Invincible. He hadn't had any hits really. He had written like Seance Dog and a couple other books for Image Comics, and he hadn't really, you know, hit it yet. And, you know, he's talking to this other professional, in his field, and he's basically explaining about spoilers for Invincible. If you haven't seen season 1, or if you haven't read, I guess up to issue 10 or so, and he's like, look, it's rather slow going, but we've got this great idea for Omni-Man and this huge twist and all of that. And the professional's like, your book's not going anywhere right now. Just, gamble, have that twist happen right now. And so he made that change, and he did that, and he gained a lot of respect for that and a lot more readers because of that. And so that was, the change that brought about, Invincible and made Invincible what it is now. I believe just because he listened to, what the fans and what somebody who understands the fans of that comic and of that genre, were looking for and what they were wanting. And it was, different from maybe what the creator originally wanted. But in the end, you got to think, as a comic book creator, what do you want? You want people to read your comic and enjoy your story. So you got to have some sort of, level of bend and give to that, to get what you both want. I love how at the end of that, you need to, be a good writer, spiel. I just write, so we're just screwed? Sometimes you can't plan it. Let's see what this looks like. I think Image Comics is still one of my favorites when it comes to the kind of stories that they tell and the kind of business model that they have. I said I wasn't going to get into comic book politics, but what I will say is something that I'm rather not fond of is how a lot of big companies right now are they're making comics that nobody wants to read, that nobody asked for, or if they did ask for it, they're in this huge minority. And I'm not saying that's any one particular group or the other. The comic that pops up into my mind right now is the Scratch and Sniff Harley Quinn farts book. Have you seen that? If you've ever thought to yourself, man, I can't write comics, man, I can't do, I don't have what it takes. I can't do the kind of art that it requires. I can't write the kind of stories that needs to be entertaining to, the masses. That book, the Scratch and Sniff Harley Quinn farts book, should give you hope. That's why, I'm glad that it's coming out. I'm glad DC Comics is making such a big fool of themselves by, producing that book, because it will give birth to a resurgence of creatives everywhere who will pick up that book. They'll see it sitting in there, because no one will buy it. It'll be sitting in the comic book shops forever. As if the comic book, the person who runs the comic book shop is dumb enough to buy a shipment of that. It will sit on that shelf. It's stinking up the whole shelf, literally, because it's Scratch and Sniff. And somebody will see it, and they'll see it every time they go in there, and they'll think, oh man, look at this. Neil Gaiman's got Sandman. Look at, Jim Lee and Batman over here. Look at all this stuff. I can't compete with this. I can't compete. Well, I could probably compete with that. I could probably beat that. And I can tell you this, you can. All right? So go out there and make something awesome, because the Harley Quinn Scratch and Sniff fart book exists. It's real. It got greenlit. Okay? You can make comics too. That's my rant for the day, ladies and gentlemen. I could not believe that when that happened, you know? I couldn't. There's a part of me that still thinks, you know, maybe it's a joke. But it came out way before April. So it's like, you know, what are they thinking? They're not. They're not thinking anymore. They're desperate. And in their desperateness, they've hired people that enjoy DC comics in a way that most people don't. They enjoy them as maybe a fetish, or maybe as you know, some sort of fan fiction that they've written. They enjoy the characters for what they can do, you know, what they can change them to be, or what they can agitate or aggravate, or the fans they can tick off. I wasn't going to get into this, but that's just something that, you know, I can't stand. It's like, if you want to make stories that, you know, showcase maybe something that you enjoy or something that you like, then make those stories with your own characters, with your own, you know, ideas. Don't, you know, go and have to have, you know, don't go and have like an absolute meltdown in somebody else's sandbox just because you can't have your way in society, or you can't have, you know, exactly what you want. I don't understand why, you know, that's the norm now, especially over at DC Comics. That's something that's just so unfortunately become a norm over there, and I hope it changes. And I'm not saying, you know, boycott DC Comics, they suck. I am saying, though, it's been a while since I've heard people be excited about DC Comics. It's been a while since I've been excited about DC Comics. I used to read like so many, I don't know how many titles I read from them. I want to say probably back when I was reading 40 titles a week, probably half of them were DC. And now I haven't picked up a DC comic in forever. And that, you know, that annoys me, because I do like the stories. I do like, you know, the times we've had with these characters and the ideas that they brought to the table. But I also think that the comic book industry is severely suffering because we're no longer looking for talent, and we're no longer looking for stories that actually sell, or actually are enjoyed by people. And no, I don't think that success is solely based on numbers of units sold. You know, I like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Blade Runner. Those are some of my favorite movies, so both of those did very poorly in terms of sale numbers. But there's a level of passion and there's a level of love going into those things, rather than just hatred, and rather than just like, oh, we're gonna show those stands, we're gonna show them, you know, we're gonna make whatever we feel like because, you know, we're this or that, or, you know, I don't really have time for that. I don't think a lot of people are interested in that. That's why, like, when politics come up in football games, you know, people don't really want to watch it. When you know, an actor talks about one thing or the other and wants to criticize everybody else except for themselves, people aren't really into that either. And it's a dangerous thing to get, you know, wrapped up in all of that, especially in a level that's like so sorely rooted in just hatred and annoyance, rather than love and passion for comics or what they're making. Anyway, don't know where all that came from, but there you go. Go out there and make something you love, not something that someone will hate. Alright, I might have to pause this here in a second. Let's see what this is about. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pause this for a second because I got a message. It's like I said, sometimes this is why I can't stream. Sometimes I get messages from people, so I have my phone in here at all. I get messages that are kind of urgent from people sometimes that I need to attend to. My life isn't chaotic until I turn the camera on, that is. So, let me finish up this bubble, and then I'm gonna do a quick pause, and I'll be right back. And none of that should affect you, and I honestly shouldn't bring it up, but I do for some unknown, stupid reason. I kind of like that. It's not bad. Could be better. Ah well, for now, that'll work. And I'll be right back when I'm back. Alright, we're back in business. Go ahead and bold some of this. I want to try to get some of this in a nicer spot before I leave. Not that I'm planning on leaving, just in case. Probably won't get everything I want done though. So, let's see if I can try to get this at least sort of where I want it. This is getting quite comic book bubble heavy down here, though. Painful. Destroy us. Painful. Original and slow ways. Yeah, I think these can all be bold italics. Actually, they might just be better in italics. Italic. I don't like this breakup. Should be a period here. That's probably why this isn't good. That's not a good jump. Alright. Let's reformat this then. Yeah, let's reformat this whole thing. This isn't gonna work. Alright, that's fine. If at first you don't succeed, cry again. I feel like every time I start these, I get like way too chatty. I just talk about whatever comes into my head, and then I come back and I look at the work and I'm just like, oh man, I haven't got a lot done. And then I just start working on the work without thinking about the entertainment or the information that should be going out to the lovely people watching this. So I apologize if I'm a bit quiet than I was before. It's only because I stepped away, and that's kind of something to say for breaks. Things get so loud and intense when you're working on something for a long time. And then if you just take a little walk, like I was only gone for like maybe 5-10 minutes. I was gone for like half a second on like, you know, this video, but like half a second for you was 5 minutes for me. And during that time, I was able to, you know, to walk around, to get some stuff done, to address, you know, what was, you know, happening, which it wasn't anything serious. When I say someone summoned me, they just wanted my help with something. But I was able to do, you know, accomplish something else. And in accomplishing that, I was able to, you know, be away from my project long enough to kind of forget how obsessive I was about certain aspects of it, and now I'm ready to address that with a fresh mind. So yeah, go outside and walk, you know, take your breaks, do what you need to do to refresh yourself. Now don't just, you know, leave and never come back to a project, or, you know, just take a break every time you feel bad about a project. Maybe there's something else, you know, there that you need to address about how you work or what you're working on. But at the same time, you don't want to just keep plowing through. It's like, I can fix this. I can get through this. I don't need to, you know, I can just power through. That's not the point. There's nobody that's going to show up and give you an award for making an entire comic in one sitting. And at the same time, there's no one that's going to come and, you know, berate you for getting up and taking a couple of breaks. As long as those breaks were well earned, I should say. I'd like this to be a bit lower, but I keep moving it up. Mostly because I think I need this tail to move, and I already solidified that, so we're just screwed. Hold on, let me see. Let me see what I can do here. I've always wondered, you know, back in the days where they were doing traditional lettering for the comics, if they had to be worried about drawing over something important, or if that was maybe the artist's responsibility, so it wasn't really a concern. I don't know, because I don't know enough about lettering, I guess. But that is something that, like, I've always, you know, wondered. And maybe that's why sometimes, like, comics have, like, those weird breaks in them. Or maybe the art has weird breaks in it, or places where maybe details that were essential to the story were covered over because the letterist was different than the artist. I don't know, that's something I've wondered every time I look at those older comics. I'm sure there's a lovely documentary out there but I haven't yet to find it. Yep, getting rid of the whole thing. Doesn't matter. It's fine. Sometimes you can spend just a ton of time trying to fix a problem, trying to make it better, trying to, you know, just get all finicky with it and get, you know, totally absorbed in the problem. But it's not going to help you. You know, sometimes you just have to let it go. And not leave the problem there, but maybe just start over. That's something that I think I'm a little too comfortable with. I was always like the first to just be like, you know, when I was working on a project, I'm like, you know, I would ask for help or critique and people would come over and they'd be like, well, I don't think it's communicating. And you're like, you're right. And I would delete, you know, my work and start over. And they were like, no, like, I mean, and I'm like, well, it's not working. It's, you know, I've been obsessing about this project for, you know, hours and hours and you know, look where it's got me. I'm in this rut that I can't get out of, so I need to move on. And, you know, that always made people worried because we have this fear that, oh, what if we can't, you know, do it again? You know, if you've done it once, you can do it again. You know? If you've made something and you thought it was a good idea, and then, you know, you work really hard on it and you work a really long time on it, and then you find out, okay, maybe it's not as good as I thought. Maybe I can just, you know, and you try to salvage that idea. You try to, you know, because at the end of the day, you're afraid that you're not going to have another good idea, or that this idea is the only good idea that you actually have. And that's just not true. I think we get way too caught up in that, and that's something that is an easy trap, especially for artists, to get stuck in. And I think that something that you can do to prevent that is just be quick to be willing to delete your work. Now, don't just delete it because you hate it or because you feel like you're not going anywhere with it. Be quick to understand that, okay, maybe this isn't, you know, the best way to go about this problem. Maybe I need to look at it from a different angle, and then do so, because, you know, you won't gain anything from just deleting things willy-nilly, but you will gain something from not, you know, pushing yourself to try to salvage something that maybe doesn't fully understand or align with the vision that you had. And sometimes, you know, things change, and not every idea that you have is a winner, and sometimes you do just have to move on. But you know, I think more times than not, a lot of good ideas are just overworked, and to the point where they're no longer good ideas. They become obsessions, and you need to be able to let go of those and be able to be like, all right, let's look at this from a different angle, and then just delete your work and rework it. So you see, kind of like what I did with this. Like, originally it was over here, and I kept trying to, you know, mess with it, and now it's over here in a much better spot where we can kind of flow. And that might affect some of this, and I might have to redo some of that, but I think I'm a little bit more happy with this. I think. I don't know. I might just have to delete it. I love the idea that there's going to be a bunch of people that are much better at Adobe Illustrator than I am, which is kind of sad because, you know, Adobe Illustrator was my job for a really long time, still is for a little bit, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be there, and they're going to be like, what are you doing, man? You know, you have to do this and that. There's this shortcut, and you're completely ignoring it. And, you know, that'll be fun to read later. Honestly, like, I think I'll enjoy hearing that, because I'll need it. I need people to tell me that I'm doing stuff absolutely wrong, because Like what I'm doing here, I'm still obsessing over if I want this point this way or not. I need to move on, but... There. Okay. Now we can move on. Until I hate it. Again. I like it better there. Alright. We'll move it there then. That's fine. But I won't be doing it again until I think of something better. Sometimes you can get stuck on pages like this for a while, and that's, you know, that's just how it is, but at the same time you need to be willing to do something else for a little bit. Maybe go on a walk. It's a nice arc. Kind of leads us into that, but I just... yeah. What if I added a... oh shoot, did this get... it got expanded. Oh no, that's not what I wanted at all. Hold on. Making all of the mistakes. Making all the mistakes on camera. Excellent. Is that even spelled right? It says it's not. There we go. There we go. And I think I want to replace screwed with like one of my underworld curse words. So let me look up that. I think that's in notes. I'm gonna have to blur this out later. Editing may blur all this out. Underworld curse words. Yeah, let's use that. There. Okay, so I'm just going to use fact, which is underworld. There we go. Okay, why do I keep going to isolation mode? Okay, I like that better. Yeah, and the reason I changed this word is because I realized down here she's like, well, screw that, so I didn't want there to be like screw up here and then screw down here. Like that's just her phrase, because it's really not. Alright, so we're going to take this, and we're going to actually take it over to where it belongs, over on this panel, on this layer. Going to actually change the angle here a little bit. I don't know why sometimes this does, yeah, there we go. I need a nice pointy end. That's something I'm a little ADHD about. Not ADHD. ADD, OCD. That's it. I know what that is. Alright, let me double check, make sure everything's good over here. Before we move on, I'll probably come back and I'll edit some of this, mostly just go through and make sure that the bulls are where I want them before I save this. Okay, so there's no real sound effects that I need on this page. Oh wait, this is something. Yeah, the stroke is off on this one. I need the stroke to be 1 point on this. Yeah, that reads a little better. a little better. Some graphic designer out there just, or even maybe a comic book editor is like, ugh, no. Yeah. You'll notice like this is an interruption. I use this a lot, where you have one comic bubble coming over top of another one, but from a different direction. Yeah. All right, so now we're gonna move on over to this, and I don't know how far we're gonna get with all this. I would love to at least get to the point where we're to here, because this is a fun part of the story, and I feel like it would be fun to get to that. Plus, a lot of this is going to be monologue from Eric, so. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to copy all the way up to panel 35. Nice. Control A, and I'm just going to make sure that that's formatted like my normal. Alright. Alright. Nope, that's on loose pages. This is on the wrong layer. Lock loose pages. Paste here. Paste here. Oh no. What happened to it? Apparently it did not show up. There we go. Alright. Something to keep in mind, and something I'm having to remind myself of a lot. This is not the time to really critique the art. At this stage, the art's been done for a while. So, you know, if there's something blaringly wrong, yes, fix it, but you also have deadlines. Something that Trent Kanuga said once, that he's a guy who's made comics and games for quite some time. He's very knowledgeable. He's also like just a cool guy in general to follow on YouTube, so definitely go check him out. But something that he said is like, you know, you've got your deadline, and you know what, after that deadline, that's it. You know, you don't spend forever fixing a panel, you don't spend forever, you know, slaving away on it just, you know, to be a perfectionist. You've got to get this done, and that is king. You know, that is what is most important. And I can't say that I've always had that, you know, mindset, but it's definitely something that I've adopted, and I've found that it's like, yeah, you know, it's more important to get stuff done on a it's more important to get your art and your work out to people and to your readers than it is for it to be perfect art. So I think that for me, a lot of times when I'm here, it's like, oh man, I wish that, you know, this line here was a little smoother, or I wish that I did this texture a little bit differently. You know, I don't have time to go in and fix absolutely everything about these panels. If I see something that, yeah, it's like it needs more work, maybe if I have time I'll get into that, but I can't afford to be an absolute perfectionist over everything, because I'll never finish this comic. And that's something that for me personally, finishing is such a big deal. It's such a I don't know. I think ever since I didn't finish my first comic on good terms, I've kind of always had this, not fear, but just this awareness that, you know, after a while I get tired of, you know, working on something or getting stuck on something, and I want to be done. And so I absolutely hate quitting on projects, but I hate making myself finish them too. So I try my best to balance that need for perfection, that need for a love for my product and for my work, with a need to, you know, get it out and produce it. And some of that, you know, comes from sticking a camera in my face and making sure that I actually, you know, produce you know, what I'm trying to, you know, to make and try to actually be someone who finishes projects rather than somebody that just comes up with great ideas and lets them sit, or that obsesses over them for hours and hours and hours and without actually finishing anything. Completing your work and completing your goals, even if they aren't, you know, fully what you expected or fully to what you imagined, and that's going to be the case most of the time. You know, even that is better than having not tried, or, you know, having given up. I feel like I'm getting distracted because I'm like formatting this text while I talk, and just reading it is hilarious because it's this fight and these little tiffs that just kind of it was very fun to write. F. Eldrin going back and forth with Eric. Because like, as I was like, you know, even as I was scripting this out, like I was trying to insert their personality and insert their voice into this, but it was so obvious what they would say and how they would, you know, move and argue with each other and get very in your face or analyticals in Eric's case. So I don't know. I enjoy writing dialogue. Let me rephrase that. I enjoy having written dialogue. I don't enjoy writing dialogue in the moment. While I'm writing dialogue, it's like, just say it. You know, why can't it just work? But then it's like, once it's finished and I'm putting it together, I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. That's actually, you know. You can see what I'm doing here is kind of emphasizing the motion of her walking away with the bubbles. But, you know, we start over here with Eric, and then we go from here, and I think we'll have a tail here between these two to show there's a bit of a pause. Give myself a little bit of a curve to the tail here. Yeah. And I don't know if you've picked it up or not, but once I'm finished with the placement and I'm fairly happy, then I will merge all these shapes together. Or I'll just jump the gun and merge them anyway, and then regret it once I change my mind. Alright. So let's emphasize ideas, philosophy. Freak. And I think because it'd be like, I'm going to go. I kind of like that. Like, maybe it's better if it's, no. Because the Z pattern is top, then you go down. Why'd you change that side? Because Z pattern. I like the idea of the reader going from the left and coming down here to the right, and then back to the left. Rather than having them just go left, left, left. Again, you want to keep your readers engaged, even if they don't realize it, because they're not going to go through and just be like, I mean, unless it's really obvious, they're not going to go through and just be like, wow, all the text was on the left. Most of the time, they're not going to notice that, but if you can kind of just give them some variation, let your words and your bubbles kind of guide them through the story. Because, like, look, so we come down here, and what we're doing is we're following the flow of the page. Obviously, you know, we work our way down the previous page down to her feet. We come down to where we see text, but then our eyes are immediately drawn to her eyes, looking down towards our next bit of text. Well, Eric's eyes are looking towards Efeldrin, and then we see her, you know, text moving towards her as well. And then I've kind of got like this bubble here helping us move down a little bit, but it is a bit of a hard break as we move here. I'm not going to pretend like everything flows, but you can kind of see kind of an S flow like this as we, you know, work our way down. That's something I try to keep in mind as I work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Go ahead and delete that. So here we're going to have in Eric's thought bubbles while he's talking, he's going to be considering and kind of scheming. He's basically going to realize it's like, yeah, Efeldrin is like really not his ideal person he'd like to work with, but maybe he can, you know, kind of use her to figure out, you know, to get what he wants. And at the same time, Efeldrin is going to be doing the same thing, but that's in the next panel, actually. Spoilers. That's the whole point of this. I'm basically just going through and spoiling my whole comic for you guys. Just because I think it's more important to teach comics than it is to necessarily worry about, you know, what's spoiler and what's not. That's not to say that, like, you should go through in your next comic project and just, like, show everybody what you're doing. But at the same time, for me personally, I think it's more important that you guys see how this gets put together, especially if you've never put a comic together. It's easier for me to know this, having kind of done this before, and have to work and rework this process until I get to a part where I like it. So what I'm essentially trying to do is prevent you guys having to make 3 or 4 comics before you finally understand, oh, this is how this should work, or that's, you know, so. But I think the obsession with things being spoiler free nowadays shouldn't inhibit me from instructing you and showing you what I'm doing and how you can also do it. Some like changes to the wording. got a lot of text we gotta get out here. So I don't know what this is, but for some reason, from copying and pasting, they get rid of I's in the middle of the words for some reason. Not every time, but like when I copy and paste, it's like, oh, we'll get rid of all the I's for you in like words like first. And I'm like, no, I need those. Those are important to me. They make my life so beautiful. Cannot just take them away from me. I don't know why Speedy Gonzalez's like slow cousin had to come in there and just be like, inform us about that, but he did. This should be 2. Yep. So we're gonna copy this, delete that, delete that. There we go. I long for the day where I can look at my art and not be so judgmental about it. I think that's part of what's like distracting me. I'm not as happy with this page. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's like particularly my best either. So it's just been like, it's difficult sometimes to you know, look at that and know that I can't really go back. I just have to be happy with what I did. Or maybe not happy, but at least satisfied for now. That's tough. And I won't pretend that it's not. But, yeah. I think, again, the reward I get for learning these lessons, rather than just trying to make myself look like a professional, you know, like at everything every time, except like not making myself look like a professional. That's not the right way of saying it. Learning the lesson of, you know, deadlines and finishing and producing comics, rather than maybe perhaps looking good or better because I spent way too much time. I think it's more important to learn that lesson for me right now. Because I think, like, yes, some people need to learn, you know, they need to spend more time on their art and they need to spend more time on creating things. But at the same time, they also will, you're going to have a period where your work is where it's at and there's not much you can do about it. You need to focus on the other bits of the process, which, you know, that might just be learning how to finish a comic. For me, that's where I'm at. I need to learn how to get this comic out, and I need to learn how to, you know, work with this new system that I'm working with, you know, figuring out how web comics work and how they kind of are different. And that's something that, you know, for me, I have to be okay with. Because that's what I set out to do. That's my number one target. My number one target. I'm starting to talk like the comic. My number one thing was finish the comic, create an interesting piece that I can use to show people, you know, what I do, how I think, while also learning myself. And I think so far I've been pretty good about that. Alright, let me try to format some of this. I might go quiet for a bit. just make this like that. It helps me sometimes just to get the what I need out on the page, all the elements out there before I start formatting it. I need to remind myself that while I'm recording, so I don't just spend forever on one panel just redoing things because I had to talk while I work. Isn't that a movie, G.I. Joe Retaliation? That's such a cool word. Retaliation. Especially for such a dumb movie. If I remember correctly, that's the one where they killed Duke. But they didn't kill him because they were trying to do like a sequel or like hint that he was alive. Just dumb. So dumb. Should have just made G.I. Joe movies that weren't trying to be, I don't know, too uppity or whatever. Too much of a franchise, I guess. Okay, so then her final word. Final words are here. See? FND. It gets rid of the eyes randomly. I don't know. Yeah, put this here. All I have to do is one of the things that I've noticed when I work on this, something I do sometimes to help me get ideas, is I will put bits of my story. What I mean by get ideas, something I used specifically, what I'm thinking of in this instance is I was looking for a elevator pitch that I could use verbally to tell people about DFD, and I was struggling with coming up with a concise way of describing it, so I typed out the long version of my summary of it into ChatGPT, and I was like, okay, how would you summarize this in like something that'll only take a couple of words, like 10 seconds or less. And it, like, I generated it over and over again, and it turned out I didn't come up with anything that was like too great, but something that was like really funny was like, it just kept like bringing up morally gray, and I found out it's because I kept like saying that like Efeldrin basically threatens to kill people all the time, and it doesn't happen that much in the story, I feel like, to just constantly be like, oh, it's an anti-hero, or it's a this or that. But it is kind of funny how like the AI was just like, yeah, it's more, Feldrin's this crazy, psycho who's trying to kill people, and Eric's basically there just to rein her in. And in this first issue, I can definitely see that, but it's, I don't know, maybe not how I would have described it, and it's not how I describe it. Back to, ChatGPT doesn't have all the answers. I've had people wonder since I made the scripting video what is and is not ChatGPT. Let me make this clear. This whole conversation was me. I think the where's the okay. So like that gave me time to retaliate is a version of what I wrote before. So what I had before was something that was like, that gave me time to strike at the, demons. And I didn't like that. So I took that and I took it into ChatGPT and I was like, okay, give me a word that would fill in for to strike at the demons. And it's like, have you tried retaliate? And I'm like, oh yeah, retaliate would probably work. And it also gave me a bunch of other words, but it never, it didn't have the context of like, who Eric was and stuff like that. So basically I use it as a thesaurus most of the time. Sometimes I have it reword some things, but no, it's not anything that where I'm like, I need a story where a Feldrin and Eric go and fight an ice demon, it's come up with all of that, and then it goes and gives me some sort of trash story that's predictable and garbage. No, it's not how I use AI. I use AI essentially as a expanded thesaurus, or a way to look up things that it's difficult for me to type into normal Google. That's how I use ChatGPT in my writing. I don't use it in art ever, because I can come up with, I know what I want for my art, and every time I've ever tried to use ChatGPT for art, I haven't been able to get what I wanted. I've tried, I wish I recorded it. I should probably do that someday, where I do a video where I'm like, my ideas versus ChatGPT. Because like I've tried various methods of trying to get ChatGPT to like recreate like a Feldrin, especially. I was like, it'd be cool to see her in like a realistic kind of painterly style without having to take the time to paint. So I was like, yeah, I was like, all right, ChatGPT, and I described a Feldrin and what she was like and all of that, and I was like, how would I describe that to make a good image in this kind of style or whatever, and I think I used Adobe Firefly at that point, and it just never got past the standard AI looking. Like, here, let me do this. Let's go to Adobe Firefly right now. Adobe Firefly. This is something that most Adobe users get if they are subscribed to a certain level. I'm not sure what. So let's just go here. Describe the image you want. Can I? Nope, I can't drop anything in there. So let's describe the image I want. I want a Shadar Kai elf girl with long white hair and gray skin and blue eyes and La Calavera, I've spelled that wrong, La Calavera, tattoos on her face. She is a sorceress and a warlock for the goddess of death. Make it in a comic book style with a full body illustration. Probably not how I should type this out, and the people that use AI art will comment on how crummy that looks, but let's go ahead and generate. Let's see what we get. Let's see what we get. Let's, you know, here we go. Na da 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 could. Okay. But you see what I'm saying. Look at this. And then let's go to like Pinterest. And then just look up AI elf girl. It's being really so. It looks the same. It looks so much the same every time. Like, it just... I can't... Like, they didn't even get her tattoos right, first of all. There's no tattoos. She's got 3 horns on this side and 1 horn on that side. And most importantly, her ears are not horizontal. Like, I get it, like, I could have spent more time trying to generate a prompt, but this is not what I want. And I know it because, like, in my head, like, even if I wasn't using a character that I already made, there's such better ways to come up with what you want and get it right the first time. And that's why, like, I'm a big sketcher. I sketch all the time. So for me, coming up with those ideas and concepting out those characters is super natural for me. But then, like, going to, like, AI and trying to do that is just, it's so obtuse, and it always looks the same, and you can't really get anything else that you know, from it other than what it's generated and what it will generate and what other AIs have generated, until eventually it's just the same sludge over and over again. I don't know. I don't hate on AI that much, but I feel like when it comes to, like, the art side of things, it's very obtuse. It's not that useful. And I know there's AI artists that are probably out there and they're not happy with me now, but I don't really care, because not because I think it's, you know, and I can commiserate with those that, you know, do AI art. There's a, you know, huge witch hunt going on now, where it's like anything that looks slightly, you know, if it's not hand painted, people freak out about it. But at the same time, I feel like that there are much better ways to ideate and get your ideas out there. Alright, I think we're gonna have to take a pause on this because I have to eat. And I'm being told that I can eat now by the people who are providing me with food today. So, we're gonna call this good for a moment, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. It's a new day. It's a new dawn. And I'm feeling pretty okay. Actually, let's just, let's cut with this and just get to work. Honestly, I don't really remember what I was talking about last night, so let's just start a new chapter in this totally uncut video, all shot on in one take. No worries there at all. Ah, snap. I am noticing that I was getting kind of, like, bubble happy last night when I was looking at this. It's like a lot of, I feel like, extra bubbles, but I mean, there's not much that I can, like, do to improve that. I feel like that's how it should be, honestly. Let's see what this looks like. The other thing I noticed was I should probably talk more about what I'm doing and what I'm thinking as far as lettering goes, and less about whatever else I was talking about, so let's try that. So here, gonna emphasize mortal, gonna emphasize packed because that's something that I want the reader to catch, you know, in this moment. Because essentially, you got to think of it, the characters are explaining something that the readers don't understand. But you don't want the characters to be like very much like turn towards the camera and explain exactly how the world in this fantasy works. No, you want them to be, you know, speak naturally as much as they can. So in this case, you know, so like Hell Baron is getting emphasized because we mentioned that on the other page. I think it's this one. Yeah, so yeah, because he's a Baron from Hells. So honestly, we'll just go back and we'll emphasize that so that it matches with later. But yeah, there's a lot of text in this little area. That's the thing with DFD that I kind of like. It's just extreme. We either have like extreme violence where like, you know, people's heads are getting exploded. It's not on this page. Or we have like just a ton of talking, I guess. That's just what this comic has become. I wish this conversation was a little bit more parallel, but that's a writing problem. What if he started thinking about some of this down here? Yeah. By the way, if you haven't read this comic, it's available on Webtoons for free. Not that I'm sure there is a paid version of Webtoons. I just am not on that, obviously. Otherwise, I'd be spending probably a lot more time on this. But I think for me, for the time being, I don't know if I'll keep it free forever. Let me put it this way. The first 5 chapters that I'm writing for this video series will always be free. Unless like I publish it, and then you will have to purchase the book, I guess, but yeah. I feel like there's lighting here that I'm missing. Maybe not. It's whatever. So we got all the way down to here, so that can go away. Noise. Going to murder someone, and you're telling a priest that. Nice. If I start humming songs, it's because I'm listening to lo-fi covers of music. I find that helps me focus while I'm working, but it also makes it helps me focus to work, but maybe not to talk as much. For sure. Alright. So there we go. That will fit that bubble a little bit better. What if we got this somewhere over here so that it kind of hooks back? I don't know. Let's get all the text on here first, honestly. That'd be better. So all of this is going to go into our thought bubbles, so we'll put that in white for now. Nice. And then this goes into its own bubble. Nice. I think we're going to go, and I said this before, we're going to go to this panel here, because that'll be the end of a long monologue that Eric will be having. just seems kind of obtuse. I feel like way should go down here. What I'm trying to do when I do this formatting is get it into like a nice little box that feels like it's all kind of just it's one statement, it's one sentence, but I don't want it to be like have a really long part, you know, a word sticking out on one end or the other. I want it to feel uniform, and I want it to feel like it's fitting well into this bubble, even before I put a bubble around it. I feel like this is kind of telling about both of them in this scene, because you've got Efeldrin who's just like, yeah, I'll just go deal with the problem. I'll go kill this guy because that's what needs to happen. And in reality, she's not absolutely murderous. She doesn't feel the need to kill everybody, obviously, that she runs into or that, you know, causes her any kind of inconvenience. But I will say, like, one of the things that, you know, Efeldrin, like, if she does run into a problem and it happens to be a person, you know, that's what's got to be done, and that's how, you know, she was raised in the underworld, to deal with those problems. But Eric's kind of the foil character to that, where he still has this moral code of his. And when I designed both the characters, I wanted them to contrast each other, and in fact, I had, and this is probably pretty obvious because I feel like I've done Eric a great disservice in this comic, not just this chapter, just in general. And I feel like that's one of the things that I would rather, if I could redo, I would flesh out Eric's character apart from Efeldrin a bit more. But as it stands, he is pretty much, when I designed Efeldrin, I took all of those attributes and I wrote them out, and then I wrote the opposite of those attributes out so that I could see, okay, this is what I want for, you know, Eric, our other main character. And unfortunately, like, looking back on it, for me, it looks like he's like a side character. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying, like, I don't know, I feel like he should be able to stand on his own a little bit more, and I wasn't able to write that as well as I liked. Which, you know, that sucks, but, you know, that's how it happens sometimes. You don't get to flesh out all the characters that you want. But I feel like for a character that's supposed to be one of the main characters, I wish I had a little bit more about him. And I say that because, like, so I was drawing this morning some of the pages, and I just visually couldn't envision, like, some of the things that were going on with Eric. And that really bugged me, because with Efeldrin, I'm not lost hardly as much as I am with Eric. And so, to me, it felt like kind of a failing on my behalf, or on my part, to the character, because it's like, I should have this figured out. I should know what my character is like in this scenario, but I don't. Or, you know, it takes me a little bit longer to figure that out. And so I think, I don't know, I'm planning on making a video where I talk in retrospective about my process for this particular comic, because yes, I'm still an amateur, yes, I still, you know, make mistakes, and I'm still learning things, and I want to convey some of the things that I've learned to you in that video, and maybe share some of my experiences and some of the things that I still think, you know, work, or some of the things that maybe I would do differently. But yeah, that's a video that I want to make. Hopefully I'll get to that. That's actually something I was going to talk about either in this video or in another. It'll probably turn into a short. So you heard it here first, folks, unless, well, not the way the algorithm works, but pretty much after this video gets done, I'm going to take a 2-month hiatus, just because I'm very much behind on my schedule. So I'm making this, and a week later this goes up, hopefully. But, you know, I hate doing that where it's like, okay, I have a week and then another week. And it makes me feel rushed anytime I don't have a nice buffer. So what I'm going to do is try to get that buffer back. But then also, you know, this is kind of important because one, like, I'm really kind of starting to feel the pressure for the deadline on this. And two, that, you know, pressure has been exceeded and multiplied really recently because of a lot of different factors in my life right now. And it's not like anything bad, it's actually some really neat and exciting things. But because of that, and I'm not going to share all of them just because, you know, this is a video about lettering and not necessarily my life. But one of the things that like is happening is I'm going to be leaving the country. Well, obviously I can't make videos while that's, you know, going on because I'll be away from my desktop and I'll be away from a lot of my work. And that's great, but that kind of upsets some of the balances, some of the things that I wanted to do. And that's another reason that I want to take this break, is because I want to be able to make more quality content, and I want to make things that I'm proud of and that people want to watch. And I feel like I've had, like, for my channel, there's been certain phases that I've gone through where, like, they've been very experimental as I've, you know, been figuring out what exactly I want to do on YouTube and how much I want to do it. For me, I feel like I've gone through 3 or 4 phases. So like when I first started, I kind of had like a schedule that I generated and figured out, and it went okay. But it was like very low impact videos until like I stumbled across where I started talking about comic paneling, and then all of a sudden that video went crazy and I was like, oh, well, this is a subject that I love talking about, and I'm, you know, people seem to like watching it, so we'll just do more of that. And then somewhere along the line, I started talking about like I did Witchtober, and that was a large part of my channel, and something I did for you know, a whole month of making videos, and that helped me figure out my editing and a lot of the issues that I was having. I think it was at that point I figured out I was talking on the wrong side of this mic. I don't know if you guys knew that, but if you go back and you listen to the audio of my old videos, which is really embarrassing for me, but I am talking on the wrong side of this mic. I have it in cardio mode, and I'm talking basically into the butt of the mic, and I did that for almost a year. And it was super embarrassing and very stupid when I found out that, oh, no, I'm talking on the wrong side. So once I flipped the mic around, all my audio went up. And since then, I've been trying to reteach myself how to mix audio because I was doing it so wrong. So that phase of, like, you know, technical advance kind of moved forward. And now it feels like I'm going back and I'm going to move into a new phase of content upgrades. So it's like, you know, we had the technical upgrades, or we had we started with content upgrades where I was learning, you know, what to make videos of. Then I learned how to make videos with technical upgrades, aka talking to the mic in the right way. And now I'm moving back into where I want to make some more high quality stuff and kind of meld what I've learned about making videos and how I make videos and how I write scripts and how I perform into more interesting content for you guys, more fun content for me to make, and yeah, just all in all, just a fun time for both of us, the viewer and the maker, creator, whatever. This is tough because I think one of the main things that people dislike about lettering is the fact that it covers up all their artwork. And I've learned that you can get rid of I've learned to think about that stage now while I'm working. Think about, you know, okay, I'm gonna have to letter this later. And again, that's why I think everybody should do every stage of the process at least once, because that's what'll set you apart from, like, kind of a corporation where, like, it's just faceless and doesn't understand. It's like, well, why doesn't, you know, why don't those bums on 5 ever get it done? Or why is, you know, the second floor always where the slackers are? And it's like, well, you're not familiar with that part of the process, so obviously there's something that you don't understand, and maybe the way that you're working is actually impeding them from doing their job. So, you know, figure it out for yourself. And it's like, you know, it's a small comic, so it shouldn't be, well, assuming your first comic probably should be a small comic. Otherwise it's, you know, kind of a nightmare. That's advice I would give. Like, DFD for me is a really small project. For me, it's taking forever to do, and yes, it's really long as far as like hours put into it. But as far as like ambition goes, like, I don't have a ton of, like, I don't want to say love, but let's say there's not as much passion in it. In the sense of, like, I came up with DFD specifically for this video series, and, you know, in a few months. Like over the period of a month, I think, I came up with everything that I wanted to do for this comic and the goals that I wanted to accomplish. And that was it. Whereas, like, The Witchborn, I have much greater ambition for, so I felt that I needed to pull away from that so that I could have this first project be DFD instead, and that one could be a little bit more sacrificial to the fact that I have, you know, less experience than I'd like in the comics. So DFD is kind of being sacrificed on that altar of me not having as much experience. That's what your first project kind of just has to be. You have to realize it's like, okay, my first comic is not going to be my best comic. It's not going to blow up. But, you know, I'm trying to decide if this is going to be 2 bubbles or not. But, sorry. That would be my advice, honestly, if you're starting in comics. Come up with a short idea, or even better, like, if you can collaborate with somebody to help you come up with a short idea, or find, like, an old script, or, like, rewrite a movie that was just poorly done. Like, watch one of those crummy videos from the 2000s, because they made a ton of these, like, throwaway action flicks back then that were, like, you know, like Underworld. There's like 6 or 7 Underworld movies, and none of them are that good. I'm sorry if you're an Underworld fan, but, like, you know, there's like simple things like where you can take that script, you can find it online and just be like, okay, we're gonna practice adapting this. You know, if you feel confident in your writing, or maybe you don't want to focus on writing, you just want to focus on your process for making comics, yeah, steal like the script from Underworld or some other movie that, you know, maybe has an interesting concept for you to work on for a little bit, but, you know, just not something that is like your dream project. Because if you do your dream project first, it could be, you know, years before you actually get it the way that you want to. So try to get that experience elsewhere if you can. I had I watched, I guess I should say, a video recently that was actually pretty cool. It was about the artist for Black Sad, which is a very pretty comic. I haven't read all of it. I read the first volume and I think the second volume. And, like, that artist, you know, he was very fortunate in the sense that, like, one of his first comics became like this huge success in Spain and pretty much throughout the world. I forget who it was. I think it was published by a French comic publisher. So, you know, he was very fortunate that, like, the first comic that he really started doing, but was, you know, essentially his dream comic. But that didn't happen until, like, he had, like, tried to break into comics 5 or 6 times, if I remember correctly, and it's like none of those times really worked out for him. I think I'm actually just going to put this up here. So I forget his name. Black Sad artist. Yeah. I don't know how I would pronounce that. Juanjo Gardino? Juanjo Gardino. Anyway, this guy, like, he had tried to make Black Sad, and his artwork is absolutely stunning. It's very good. He watercolors his whole painting, his whole comic, and it's stunning to me how much time he will spend in that and how well he crafts his work. He used to be an animator for Disney, and he was like learning the 2D animation stuff. Oh my goodness, did he do Freak on the Leash? Did he? If he did that, that's like another, that's another, yeah, why don't you look at Freak of the Week music? Yeah, he was the lead animator for Freak of the Week, which is an amazing music video. You should definitely go check that out, by the way, by Freak Kitchen. Freak of the Week, right here on when I like lilt my words at the end, it makes me feel like I'm on the radio. Anyway, Juanjo Gardino, amazing work, but it took him years to get to the point where he was finally able to do his, publish his first comic and have that comic be like the one that he really wanted to do and the one that was kind of like his dream. This is starting to get frustrating. A little bit better. I could make this a little bit longer here. If you're not familiar with Illustrator controls or commands, there are so many more qualified people to explain how to use Illustrator. I learned in college, but honestly, you don't have to really take any real courses as far as like, go to college or any kind of school. Just go online and honestly just start working your way through Adobe Illustrator. I hate like recommending, whoops. I hate it so much I hit my mic. I hate recommending Adobe products in the sense of like, I don't like how their subscription model is, where it used to be you could just buy the product and own it and use it forever. Whereas now it's like, you have to pay for it every month, and that I think that price is like $60 or more. I don't know what it is, but I know it's expensive, and it bugs me every time I have to pay that. And every time it's like, I use it enough to where it's worth it to me, but I know a lot of people where it's just like, I talk to them about how I work and they're like, well, what program do you use? And I'm like, well, you can use any program, but it's like, honestly, this is the professional standard. So they're going to monopolize that and do put whatever price they want on it. But it's, it is a product that is fairly easy to use once you figure out the basics, and the basics are just everywhere online, and that's something that I feel like that is a definite plus as opposed to using other products to do this kind of thing. Because it's like, yes, you can do word bubble stuff in Clip Studio Paint, and I actually have a pretty good tool for that. I've just never gotten used to how their text system works, and I don't love it. And because I don't love it, I would much rather use a product I'm familiar with than try to struggle to figure out another one. So it's like here, let me just do, yeah. Oh snap, did I just make a whole nother comic? No, cancel. It's gonna make a whole nother comic now. I just wanted one page, but here, if we go over here, I think it's this. Nope, it's this. Alright, sweet. So you can make like your comic bubbles fairly easy. You can go in here and you can change how big you want these to be, and they even have like a little bit of let's see, I think there's different methods of how you can combine these bubbles and whatnot, and they even have like the balloon tails, which is really handy. So I can actually get that a little bit bigger, and that's like not bad. This is a bad example of like how this works. Hold on, let me turn that up. Yeah, so like they've got like some nice shortcuts. So you see it automatically merges the shape, but that's about where it ends for me as far as like advantages goes, as opposed to working over here in Illustrator. And people will argue with me with that because they know better and they know more. But I gotta say, I do like how this works, and I do like the flexibility that I have much more. Love how this looks. If I could get it on like two lines, that would be preferable. So here's a good example of masking. So I want these two to be connected, but I want her ear to go through it. What I mean by it is I want this shape right here to be behind her ear, but her ear is in Photoshop, it's not here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just kind of make this mask around it with the pen tool. And then I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to expand this shape, and I'm going to expand it again, let it nice, make it just one solid like that. Shift M, which is the shape builder tool. And what that'll do is kind of cut it. And the line matches right where the line work is, so I don't really have to worry about that. But if I was a little bit worried about how that looked, I might go in and just kind of add like another extra shape here, and get rid of the stroke, like so. So that it goes up all the way to the line, but in this case, I think this is fine. So these are now two separate shapes. I'm going to group them. And then I'm going to actually, what I should have done before that, but that's okay, hindsight is 20/20. I'm going to expand this bottom part out a little bit to give the impression that it's angled down. Actually, you know what, let me just do this over again so that it looks the way that I want it to, and then I'll cut it. So again, here we go. Just following the line work that I have. Going ahead, making this just one shape. I don't need the stroke right now. Getting rid of all of those shapes. Alright. Alright, there we go. So this thought, I don't know if I want to keep it, but it is kind of important. Let's see if I can make this a little bit better. A little better looking. This conversation was fun to write, or interesting to write, I should say, where I get to explore what the characters think about each other in the context of they both want to use each other. They both want something from each other. They both see something to gain. But it's not in like a way that you would think normally or like heroically. Like for your typical team up, both of them are just like, this person has what I want, or at least has maybe something that I could use to get what I want. So, you know, because usually how it goes is it's like, you know, this character has this attribute and this character has this attribute. They're made for each other. They can work together. It's an excellent team up. Whereas these characters are like, the, you know, stupid person that almost got me killed might be useful to me. I don't love this breakout. It's not bad. This doesn't need to be bold italic, just needs to be regular. That's all regular. Alright, sweet. Sweet, so we're going to have one bubble here, because these are going to be identical thoughts that they have, because they're basically thinking again, they're teaming up, but they're separate. And that's what I want to emphasize in this first comic, is like, if they had just kind of collaborated a little bit, maybe, you know, this would have turned out better. But yeah. It's almost funny that, like, she's thinking more than he is. Like, he's probably thinking faster, but, like, the fact that, like, he thinks, oh, I can manipulate around her because she's not really, you know, considering that much. When in reality, though... Oh, pardon me. Yeah, so as I was saying... I don't remember what I was saying. I think I'm going to try to make these a little more square and a little less long, because I think that would flow a little better and maybe give me a little bit more space to figure this out. I haven't done any of the bold text yet, except for just Scruffy Hobo. But a lot of this balance that I'm doing within these borders, like making sure that like all of this is even and whatnot, like some of it's the align tool, like you'll see me use, but a lot of other times I'm just like eyeballing it. And if it looks fine, then I'll just leave it, but other times. And that's something that I picked up from school. I had a teacher that told me essentially, like, we had an assignment where you were supposed to measure with a stick, like a measuring stick that they gave us. Like it was basically just like a skewer, and you're supposed to take that and be able to, you know, measure like, you know, you learn in art school. And I had done that for the base measurements, but I just kind of went from there, and I didn't guess the measurements, I just eyeballed the other measurements. And the teacher kind of like had noticed that and came over to, you know, check and basically give me the spiel. Okay, well, see, this is why we measure. But all of my eyeballed measurements were basically spot on, and they were like, okay, so yes, you're right, but don't do that again. Like, you know, don't get cocky. And I was like, okay. And like ever since then, like I've kind of been a little cocky about it, because like I can generally get it pretty close. Generally, I won't say that like I'm you know, perfect in that method or in that way every time, but I will say that I've gotten pretty good at eyeballing my measurements and eyeballing my balance for some aspects. Other times it's just like, eh. I don't love this break. I like the look of it. Because you can see this, like if you're just reading this, you're reading this separate from this, whereas this is just one large area. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this over here, make another copy, and try to break this down a little bit further into just a more round shape. Like so. So it doesn't take up as much space in that area. Horizontally, but maybe we can take some vertically. That's not that bad. There we go. One of the things that Bad Ink Studios has taught me from watching their videos online is, you know, the importance of balance and the importance of breaking up certain parts of the text and certain ways that the text is formatted to, you know, convey exactly how the speaker is actually saying things. And something that, you know, they talk about a lot also on there is like hand lettering the comics, or the letters in comics. And I gotta say, as cool as that looks and as awesome as they do it, I can't even begin to imagine trying to do that. Especially, my handwriting is awful. And I understand, like, if you did that, your handwriting would get better. Your, you know, line work would get better because you would be, you know, focusing on your penmanship and such like that. But sorry, I just got caught up in reading that and double checking some things. But I gotta say, like, that's not something that I think I can commit to. This was not in this comic. We'll see. Maybe someday I'll try that out, but I don't know. Bad Ink Studios, if you're watching this, I don't think I can follow in your footsteps as far as that's concerned. As far as traditional lettering, and they've got their own comic. Haven't read it. I've only seen the art, and the art looks pretty good. The lettering also looks good, which is an art form, as they will tell you. I actually don't mind that. Oh shoot, is this? Oh no, it's not the TikTok colors. Almost thought that Feldrin's colors and Eric's Thought Bubble colors are the same as TikTok's. Hold on. I hope not. TikTok logo. Oh no. Oh no. What have I done? Oh no. Oh shoot. Wait, maybe it's not. Maybe I might be freaking out over nothing, but I'm fairly certain. I'm fairly certain. I'm so scared. No. Okay, it's a little bit lighter, but that's so similar. Oh no! That's favorite daughter's TikTok. That's terrible. Oh. Nope, that's it. Whole comic's canceled now. Just delete everything. Nope. Goodbye. Say goodnight. Oh, I can't believe I didn't think about that. Oh, I'm such a fool. Okay, it's alright. We'll get over it. We'll get through this. I know we will. Just have to believe. I don't know in what, but we just have to believe. I think this is going to be a vertical. Or just that. That's not bad. There's some letterist out there that's made a perfect course for how to do this. I don't know, maybe Bad Ink Studio. I think, honestly, if they made like just a comprehensive course, I love Bad Ink Studio's like shorts. I think they do great with those. But I do, and I understand why they make short form content, because in this world, that's just the way to work in this, for this audience that has become incredibly impatient, I'll say. And I think having short form content in that, you know, level is a great way to promote your your content, your comic, and whatever you're teaching. I really, really wish that they would do like either release a book about comic book lettering, which, I mean, obviously they release their comics, so there's that. Or do a course. If they did a course, I would take that so fast, because I feel like they're very knowledgeable about it, and I think they're humble in the sense that they don't think they know everything, which is, you know, that's cool. But at the same time, they know so much that I think it would be valuable to at least have like either a short course on YouTube or a I don't know, if they had like a Udemy course or a I don't know, Domestika maybe. I'm not sure where the best place to put your courses are, but they should look into that. I love taking online courses like that are just very specialized. I'm gonna try to combine these two, and I think the way I'm gonna do it is just gonna be kind of janky for speed purposes. I used to think that everything I did in the comic had, in general, everything I had to do had to be like 100% absolutely perfect all the way through. Every part of it was going to be, like you could open up the file and you could see, oh, everything's great. Everything is, 100%. There's no weird jank in here. But if you pry open the files to any project, and I mean any project, you're gonna find some jank. I know this because when I work on, animation, most of my job is hiding some of that, hiding some of the shortcuts and the reused assets and the things that we do to make, whatever we're making work. And the thing about that is, I used to think that was, not okay and that was unprofessional and whatever. And then I watched this Disney animator, they were talking on, I think it was Corridor Digital. And they were talking about like how, like, yeah, I think it was from Frozen 2. And one of the things that they had done was like to show the scene where I think it's Olaf is singing something about growing up or something like that. I don't remember. And he basically revealed in the layers, it's like, yeah, if you go in here we have this creepy scene with all these eyes in the woods, and all of that is just Olaf. They just took Olaf and like reused him over and over again rather than making a new asset. And that was like, at first I saw that, I'm like, that's cheating, and then I thought about it more, it's like, actually that would like save a ton of time. So I haven't really thought that way about my projects in a while. So it's like, if there's a quick way to do it and it'll get me the same result rather than one that makes me look cool, I'll always do the quick way. Every time. I don't know if I love these bubbles. I might love it a little bit more if I did that. Nope. I don't know. I don't know if that breaks the consistency in a good way. Yeah, I don't think I like that. Alright, we're getting rid of the bubbles. So we got this lovely little transition as we come down here. And I don't think there's a ton of text that is going to go there. Let me get rid of these old ones. Let me go ahead. Tell you what, I'm going to skip bolding some of this text out and just keep moving forward. And if I have time, I'll come back and I'll do it. And if I don't, I'll do it off screen. Because I want to try to get through this next bit fairly quickly. Alright, so now we need to go ahead and we need to get the next bit. Here's the next bit. All the way down to here. Perfect. I'm listening, like I said, to lo-fi right now, and I keep hearing Teardrop by Massive Attack. And I think it's because Dan Avidan has released with the Super Guitar Bros a cover of that on the Game Grumps channel, and it's so good. I'm not sponsored or anything, and I'm not like trying to promote them, but like I do love that song, and I think Dan Avidan and the Super Guitar Bros have done a fantastic job on that and several other covers that they've done in the past. So I would say definitely go check it out, especially if you like the original song by Massive Attack. I didn't know I liked Massive Attack until basically I was listening to, or I was watching the Matrix, and in the background in the opening scene, Neo is, on the desk and he's got headphones on, he's sleeping, and I think it's Dissolved Girl is playing by Massive Attack. Look up Matrix, Neo. What is listening to? Dissolved Girl by Massive Attack. So that was a pretty cool moment, because when I went to look up that song, I found out that I knew the album actually pretty well, because I used to listen to a ton of music just without really comprehending the people behind it and how they made their music and what they did and maybe what they were trying to do as artists. So I actually looked them up and listened to that album and a couple of other songs, and I was like, oh, I've heard this like a lot before. And that's something that like I really want to stress when I'm working, or when I'm using things that, when I'm referencing things, or when I'm using things that belong to other people. I want to make sure that those people, get their the credit that's due. Not, so much to cover my butt as far as copyright goes, but in a sense that, to make it easier for people who are looking maybe for that song, or for people that are maybe looking to get a little bit more out of the music that they're listening to, other than just whatever TikTok throws up there as a song, or whatever becomes a trend next. Because that's what annoys me about, I think, the most about music today, is that it's everywhere and nobody knows any of it. Nobody knows the words, or the artists, or the title to any song nowadays. They're just like, oh, that was this trend, or that was that trend. And it bugs me, because these people have worked hard, and this music is good, and you enjoy this music, but you won't take the time to look it up. You won't take the time to check out the artist. And I've never understood that. That's what's unfortunate, especially with like on TikTok. Again, I'll rant a little bit more about that. My biggest problem with TikTok is like they supposedly are like so like strict about, you know, copyright and certain things, and the whole, oh, you can't say dead, you gotta say unalive, or suicide, you gotta say unalive, or you gotta say this or whatever. And you know, if they want to be all self-righteous and stuff like that, then why don't they, you know, have a better, you know, AI or system of some sort to actually get people to see the songs, like who made the songs that people are using over and over and over again. Because it's like, you can't find those songs once, you know, because people generally don't take the time to label those songs in the sound category. And so that's the thing. They don't become songs anymore, they become sounds. And it's so disheartening to see that for the music industry, society, just in general, because music is still an art. And I feel like we've taken the art out of music, we've taken the art out of painting, we've taken the art out of so many things. And to see that happen to songs that I like and songs that I know other people enjoy greatly, it's just so sad. It's dystopian, really. So a lot of times, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I put music up there all the time for most of my posts, as far as like stories and stuff goes. Every time I can, I make sure that the original artists, like they have an option for the album to be up there and the artist's name, so I make sure it's up there. Anytime that I can credit the artist or direct people, I've had people ask me, it's like, oh, who did this song in this video? I'll go and I'll look it up if I haven't, you know, put it in the video. And that's not saying every time I have background noise. I'm not that good. I could be better. I'm not saying that I'm the champion of this cause, but something that I try to do as much as I can is make sure that if I have a song or if I have a piece of media that I'm using, I make sure to either credit the artist or make sure that they know, okay, this isn't mine, this isn't something that I've done, so don't, you know, attribute that to me and my creativity, because their creativity is, you know, maybe what inspired me. Again, I'm not the best at it. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that are much better than me at that, but there's whole pages now dedicated to like, oh, these are the songs that you heard, and this is how, you know, this is where they originally come from. And as soon as I remember seeing that and just being like, they used to just call that the radio. And I know I'm probably sounding old, but it's just, I grew up, you know, listening to the radio, and I didn't really think too much about, you know, like who was playing the music or what. I grew up in the era where digital was starting to show up. So for me, at some point in my life, I started listening to records. It was after my grandfather, actually. We were, I don't know, I was fairly young, but we were getting babysat by my grandparents, and they were watching us, and my grandpa pulls out these old records and he starts playing them. I thought they were the coolest thing ever, because I couldn't figure out how the music was coming out of the discs, because like I had, I think, some cassettes at that point, because we didn't buy like new CDs, but we had some cassettes, and like I could kind of figure out how that worked. But like just watching, I remember watching the vinyl and just being mesmerized by it, and then my grandpa like being able to tell me everything about the song and everything about, and you know, what year it was made, who was singing, and all that. And I just thought that was so cool. So I blame my grandfather for A, getting me started collecting vinyl, and B, getting me to start to think about music and who's doing it and what they're saying and, you know, why I think it's catchy, not just because it's catchy or trending or whatever. And so, I don't know, that's something that's kind of personal to me and something that I kind of get a little bit passionate about when I'm talking to people. It's like, oh, I love that sound. I'm like, no, that's not a sound. That's Metallica. No, that's, you know, that's this artist. That's that artist. They sing this. It comes from this album. Look it up. It's really good. Because if you like it, because that's the thing. I'm not trying to judge people for liking stuff, whether they, you know, see it on Instagram first or TikTok first. That's not the problem. The problem is that, oh, I like this song, and they don't know where to go from there. They don't know where to look for that band or that sound or that kind of idea. They just wait to be fed by the algorithm again, whatever the algorithm deems as the next song that they'll listen to and the next thing that'll be popular. Personally, that's how I like to find my music. That's not how I like to find my music. I like to find my music naturally. I like to walk into places, turn and hear something that maybe I don't know, and either ask, you know, people who are playing it, or pull out Shazam, look that up, look up the album, listen to the album, you know, pull up the artist, read stuff about them. It's like, you know, that's just, to me, that's such a fun and natural way to find music, because then you can find other people that maybe know bits of that song but never were able to locate the original. Anyway, I'm ranting some more. Let's get all of these thoughts out here. So this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. All of these are going to be captions. So all of them need to be white text because they're going to be on a dark background. Oh, we finally got a sound effect. Sweet. I don't think we're going to ever get another one. This is on the wrong... No, it's on the right layer. Never mind. Nice. Okay. We can do this. I believe in us. Let's go ahead and let's format this right here, because this down here is like, basically he's like, don't get, you know, separated. We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it very formulaic. And then I'm just going to put like an hour later, he's like panicking and he can't find her because she's just had it. Don't love the Alfarn today. You ever stare at text so long it just no longer becomes text, it just becomes shapes? That's where I'm at. Let's go to my favorites. What have I got? What if I put 1 hour later? Nice. That's not bad. This is like a pleasing transition. Like the color and the whatnot. Alright, do we want to work our way up, or do we backwards, or do we want to do this? Let's do it scrolling down. So, here we go. Just about finished. Gonna go ahead and put this here. Can I just select it? There we go. Sometimes when I'm on a call with my friends on Discord, or we're having a, you know, just a chat, I'll pull up my work because I'll sometimes be able to talk to them while I work, or it reminds me of the times when we were, you know, in the lab and we were working together back in school, and I'll be working on something like this, and I have a certain friend in mind. I'm not going to mention their name, but they every time I open up Adobe Illustrator, they know 5 or 6 shortcuts that I don't, and it always makes me feel a little bit stupid. But it's super helpful. So like at times I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I wish they were here to help me out on this. But I feel like if I did have them on this video, it would just be like a lot of me looking stupid and a lot of them looking like, yeah, duh. Although it would probably be nice to have somebody to help me co-host this a little bit better and maybe bring up topics instead of just sit there quietly for hours on end. But as I understand, some people enjoy this for the fact that they just get to watch me work and not that they get to listen to me talk. Basically, this exchange is the quintessential, oh, we go into a new town D&D experience. Okay, so we go into a town, we have a goal, okay, but like the planner of the group is like, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do the other thing, and it's like some of the players are, you know, like Eric, and some of the players are Feldern in this. For me, I'm definitely a Feldern when it comes to this kind of planning. If I can't get past the tedium of it all, and it's just like, it's super boring to me when we sit there and plan out for hours and it just goes to crap every time. And I don't think it's like, you know, I'm not obviously as impatient as a Feldern. I don't just run off to do something else while they're doing that. Like, I try to be as patient as I can, but that's something that, like, I've noticed is like, I am not a planner when it comes to playing any kind of tabletop game. It's just like, oh, let's just do it. We'll figure out what happens. And I kind of enjoy like the chaos of it a little bit. Not like to completely derail maybe the DM's plans or anything, but like definitely I enjoy exploring the world and knowing that, yeah, I don't know everything, and that's okay. So that's kind of like what I was thinking. As far as like in this scene, I was just like, ah, yes, this would be a great way to kind of channel some of that energy. Because I've definitely done this at the table. I've sat there and just made this face at the people surrounding me. It's like, well, we need to check this. You know, how many health potions do we have? I'm just like, I don't flipping care. We'll either die heroes or live long enough to watch our corpses rot in this dungeon if we don't move. It's just like, there's times where I'm just like, it's fine, it'll be fine, we'll figure it out. And you know, I get it, sometimes it's like characters are, you know, people are just, that's their character, they would plan out. Other times I feel like it's just like, you just want to play a strategy game, and you know what, that's cool. This is something for everybody, but you are killing me. I think it's just because when I sit down to play a game, I have to be patient for so many things in my life, and I have to be like calculated, I have to think so much, so that when I do sit down to enjoy something, I don't want to be patient. I don't want to have to think. I don't want to have to do anything. I don't want to have to micromanage anything. I just want to do my thing. Alright, let's figure out how we're going to do this. So, let's go ahead. I kind of like that. Let's give it a bit of a stroke to kind of give it like that. Break up maybe some of the monotony there. Maybe a 2 point. Nice. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go object, expand, okay. Then we're going to ungroup all the shapes so that we can start to kind of play with their size and where they're at. I always like having the biggest changes in size and shape with the O's. I feel like they just lend themselves to being more expressive than any of the rest of the letters. And I don't know why. I can't explain what makes them that way. Basically want to give the illusion that this text is kind of bubbling up from her. So I think what I will do to enhance this is I'm going to make this green. Even though only half of it's green now. Hold on. What is happening? Oh, there we go. So you're kind of working with onomatopoeia when you're working with sound effects. In my experience, which is incredibly limited, so take this with a grain of salt, but in my experience, you want to kind of make the motion of the sound when you do the sound effects. So in this case, it's coming up, so it's kind of like this gurgling, bubbling kind of annoying sound. But I kind of have it like almost coming out like it's a, I don't know, like it's bubbling out of her Very nice. Okay, we are flying through this section. So let's go ahead and let's get this right here. So Eric's just going on and on about this stuff. And it's kind of like annoying Unfiltered to the point where she can no longer like focus even on like the chase. And you'll notice like Eric's being almost paranoid with this, like he's being very, very cautious, whereas she's about to just like throw all caution to the wind. If chapter 3 isn't out yet, let me just spoil it for you. Oh, I can't, never mind. But basically she's going to go to this pub and just basically walk in there and just be like, hey, has anybody heard about this, you know, devil? And they're gonna be like, oh yeah, and then just kind of tell her whatever she wants to know, because she's like, she's like fun and exciting, and like, you know, she's not coming in all, you know, she's kind of like a party girl. She's going in and she's like, hey, what's up? Pass the booze. Let's get let's get this party started. I'm sure that's how all parties start. Pass the booze, my good man. I would like your finest alcoholic booze for my enjoyment. You can tell I don't drink. Actually, let me break up this text a little bit more for a little bit of comedic effect. There we go. I like how silver Unfiltered looks in this. Like, I think it's just the lighting, the way that I have it. And obviously her skin tone always kind of makes her look a little bit silver. I mean, she's, you know, a gray skinned person, but at the same time I think it's cool how the lighting in the scene, like with the purples and such, complement that and her tattoos and whatnot. So this gets bolded and italicized, and yeah, I think that's honestly not that bad. I might do a little bit more tweaking here and there. But overall, I think for this video, I think we're done. So, there you can see our work that we were able to get done. We got this page completely figured out, or well, almost figured out. I've got like 2 more panels to go, but fairly good work. Over here we finished up this page starting from here. Yeah, we got like I don't know, like about like I'd say 10 pages done. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope that you watch maybe some of the other long-form content that I've made. I enjoy making this, and I hope that you enjoy watching it. Make sure to like and subscribe, because I'll be making more of it very soon after I take a little bit of a break, because I have more fun content that I want to make, and more fun videos and things that I want to try. But unfortunately that takes time, and time is something that I don't have, so I'm gonna have to take a little pause. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to go out there and make something awesome, and I'll see you next time.